All right. So the last of the lecture-style talks in the advisor track today is going to be Scott Whitfield, who is a professor of physics at the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, and is actually representing one of the older affiliate groups that has representation here today. So this is a little exciting. It's a bit of a different perspective that we have. Scott has an extremely complicated background story that I will let him tell if he chooses, but suffice it to say, he is a firm atheist now and has been the advisor of the Secular Student Alliance at UW-Eau Claire since he started attending, after starting attending in 2007, when the faculty advisor position opened up in 2009, he took over and he's been there ever since. So he's going to share some of his experience, especially with running a small group, how to keep things going. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot. Glad all of you stuck around. Okay, so here's just sort of a short outline of what I'm going to do. And so I do want to put some things in perspective. So I want to talk a little bit about the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, just to give you an idea of the size, how we compare to other institutions in the state and larger ones. I mean, we're a lot smaller, obviously, than the Ohio State University. Then I'll talk a little bit about the College Free Thought Group and go through my role and some things that we do. So in sort of figuring out this talk, it wasn't really clear which way I'd go. So in some ways, you're going to sort of see the bathroom sink. I'm going to sort of just talk about everything that we do and what has been sort of working for us. And some things you'll be very familiar with, I think, and you'll be able to take away. And maybe some things will be like, oh, hey, that seems like a good idea. Okay, so some of you have driven through Eau Claire, apparently, but I just want everybody to realize that we're on the same page here. So here comes my only joke of the talk. So to start out, we are in the Milky Way, okay? By the way, I took this with my iPhone, pretty amazing. So the sun's over here in one of the outer spiral arms, okay? All right, so there's the joke. So where are we actually? Okay, so here's a picture of Wisconsin. We're in the northwest part, and actually it turns out we're closer to Minneapolis-St. Paul than the places that you are probably most familiar with, which would be Madison down here where the University of our biggest campus is in the university system, in Milwaukee over here, which has the second biggest. So if ever you're on your way, from the east going towards Minneapolis-St. Paul, you'll drive right through Eau Claire. All right, so here's just a quick overview of what the campus looks like. It's split in two by the Chippewa River. That's what you see in the upper left-hand side there. Most of the campus is on the north side, and the rest is on the south side. This is the bridge that crosses the Chippewa. A very nice bridge, except in January, it is not a very pleasant walk for the students, as you can imagine. You often run into wind chills of -20 or so. So that's a complaint. Well, I love winter. Otherwise, I guess I couldn't live in that state. All right, so again, just some details here to put this in perspective. It was founded as a teacher's college in 1916. Okay, the university system is sort of strange. We have, I think it's like 12 four-year universities and like 8 to 10 two-year. It's really sort of odd how they do things. It turns out, even though we have about 10,500 students, we are the third largest campus in the state. The largest, of course, is Madison, 40+ thousand students, and then Milwaukee. We are mostly a liberal arts granting institution. There's a few programs that have master's degrees, namely business, education, English, and nursing. And nursing now actually has a PhD program. But that's the only one. Physics, which I'm from, and all the physical sciences, most things, you can just get a bachelor's. All right, as far as student organizations go, I think it's probably pretty viable, probably not that different from other universities. We have 250+ student organizations. Okay, 16 of those are religious organizations of pretty much every stripe. And College Free Thought, which has been around since right around 2003, 2004, is what's considered a special interest group. Okay. Another example of a special interest group, just to give you an idea what you might have, is there's a slacklining club. All right. If you don't know what slacklining is, you probably have heard of it. That's where you take a nylon rope and you stretch it between 2 points, make it really taut, and you do tricks on it. Okay, I happen to be, of all things, the faculty advisor for that, but I don't do much work for that. But anyway, lots of different student organizations. Okay, actually, this is the old one where it says check for actual date there. That should have been gone. But anyhow, it's somewhere around 2004, 2003. Okay, and so there's our official constitution. Every group that's an official group has to have a constitution in terms of what they do, what they try to promote. So that's pretty much standard verbiage for what you would expect for any kind of free thought group. Okay, so I came to the university in 1997. All right. And so that was before the group got founded. But what's interesting, at least from my point of view, is that I didn't even find out about the group until really 2007. Okay, so 3 to 4 years after it had been formed, and that was really sort of a surprise for me. So the first thing I would say to any advisor or anybody in the group is that, and I'll talk more about this, it's really important to advertise, to let people know that you're out there, not just other students, but faculty members, or as we'll see later on, there's people that are involved in our group that work at the university that aren't faculty, and actually they have really contribute a lot to our meetings. So anyhow, how did I first find out about this is when they put on a really big event, which is they invited Dan Barker from the Freedom from Religion Foundation, since that's in Madison, not that far, to get him up. And so they did a really good job of advertising this, and Dan came and I found out about it. They had talked about it. They had made a big deal about this, and I thought, wow, this is really neat. I went there, and of course, what's one of the things that you're always supposed to have at these meetings is a sign-up sheet where you put your email address, sign up. And so that's how I found out about it, okay? But in principle, I should have known about the existence of this group prior to that, but that's when I found out about it, okay? All right, so I guess you could definitely consider us to be small. So what does small mean? We have to have some way of counting what it means to be small. So of course, it depends on how you want to count things. So here's sort of 3 different ways. If you look at our email list, which actually does include some alumni, even people that have moved far away, we have about 167 people. Okay, and that list is of course growing all the time. Steadily people get added. Some people will request to be taken off of it too, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, if you look at our Facebook page, it's not quite as many, 68. All right, but probably what's most important is how many of our people show up on a weekly basis, and that's anywhere, I would say, between about 5 and 10 students typically. Okay, all right, and it's been pretty much that way. We've been in a few leaner years, and maybe in a few more years that have had a little bit more, but that's pretty typical. I say that I'm there for 95% of the meetings. It's probably actually closer to maybe 98%, but I haven't rigorously figured it out. Okay, and some of the things I think that Dan mentioned, I think it is really important. I think it does help for the advisor to be involved. And now I'm involved mostly, as I'll go through later, because I enjoy doing it. It's not like I feel I have to, keep tabs on the students and, know what they're doing and things like that and push them along, which I have to do maybe just a little bit, but not much. But I enjoy doing it, and, being involved, I think, is good for them, and it also keeps me informed about how, the organization is going. Okay. All right, so how does this compare to some other free thought groups? Well, you would think Madison would do a good job of telling you something. I went to their Facebook page, and I could absolutely find out nothing. All right. So anyhow, I probably should have looked at some other places, but Minnesota was a good example. Minnesota, University of Minnesota, at least as big as Madison, maybe not quite as big as Ohio State, but anyhow, 434 Facebook members, okay? So that gives you some idea compared to us, all right? All right, so here's another really important thing. This is something I think that SSA always points out too. I think that's what's really important. One of the first things that you need to do is decide on a room and a place that you will consistently meet in every single week or every 2 weeks or how often you're meeting, so that students always know and can rely on this particular time and this particular place to always be there, okay? And so that's one of the first orders of business we try to get out of the way at the beginning of the semester, is figuring out a time. And as far as the place goes, we have to just send into the student organization, say we would like to reserve a room at this time, and then they'll usually are pretty good about finding a spot for us, okay? All right, so last semester, what was it? It was Tuesdays from 4 to 6 p.m., okay? All right, and this is something that the members vote on, even people that aren't necessarily at that meeting but are on the email list. We try to always find a time that's conducive to everybody. All right, now here's one thing that we try to do, because as Dan was mentioning before, it's really easy, and our group has done this, that after discussing a little bit, it's really easy to just degenerate into being theist bashers, basically, or talking about things like that. So I don't know how long we've been doing this or who actually came up with this idea, but what we try to do is have a unique topic that we vote on that we do every week. And we try to be as diverse as we can, so we try not to always do things that deal with religion, but anything that can, rational thought can be brought to sort of examine. I'll give you a list of some of these topics in just a little bit. The beginning of the meetings usually devoted to business, and of course there's more business at the beginning of the semester that you have to sort of take care of. Later on you may not have to bother doing much of that at all. Okay. All right, so here's just a list of some of the topics. We sort of brainstorm the very beginning. People just throw out topics, and usually our president writes them down, and then we will, maybe that week, we'll vote on what we're going to do the following week, and then the rest of them we post online. We use one of these Google tools and just have people vote on what they're most interested in. And you can see this thing runs the gamut from all kinds of things, and there's probably maybe 5 or 6 more I could have added to this. But it goes all over the place. This is one I missed, but this is sort of, I find an amusing one. Lawns was actually one of our topics of discussion. And you might think, well, geez, that's awfully boring. But if you think about, manicured lawns, all the time and money spent mowing it, the fertilizer, does it really make sense? Is this a good use of resources? Since when should, people's views on having their house look good, come up against environmental concerns, all that kind of stuff. So somebody was really interested in that, so why not? We'll talk about lawns. Okay, so like I said, unfortunately I missed that one, but anyhow, I've been to most of the others. All right, so here is just this is from last semester. They gave us sort of a room that was smaller than we would like, but it just shows, some of the people that we have there. Okay, you can see me over there. There's 2 people at the other end one of them taking pictures that you don't see. But I did want to mention, well, okay, I'm violating what I'm supposed to do. This here is Dan. He works at the university. He's not a student. Okay, and he's allowed to be involved in this, but just like me, he can't vote. Only students can vote. But usually we have one other person that wasn't so much involved this year, but the previous year he was involved quite a bit, who also worked at the university. So we always get a little bit of some people from the university who aren't students that are involved in this, which I think is sort of nice. Gives it a little bit added perspective. Okay, and then here's a picture looking the other way. The person taking the picture, you can't see that's, well, he's not in there because he's taking the picture. Okay, so that's sort of a typical what we might have. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about my role as the faculty advisor, okay, and what I have to do. Well, as all of you know, and I'm sure this is pretty much the same at every single university, officially, there has to be a faculty advisor for the organization. It cannot exist unless there's somebody that does that. All right, so I have to be there on paper, okay? So basically, what do I try to do? I sort of aside from attending the meetings and being involved, sort of the role I see otherwise is just to make sure that all the little bits of minutia and administrative things that have to be taken care of are taken care of. And, prompt the students, when necessary. Okay, you guys, we've been told we have to update our Constitution. We need to get on this. Usually I don't have to push very hard, but I do. That's what I see as part of what I have to do, is just to make sure that things like this are actually taken care of, okay? Making sure that, our room is reserved, making sure our SSA membership is up to date, all right? I just recently had to move. For a long time, the money that the organization had was managed by the university, and now they've turned it over to U.S. Bank, so I had to go and open up a U.S. Bank account for the organization, which was sort of a pain, but I didn't see any reason why I should put them through that, so that's something I did. So basically, it's just those things. But then, on the flip side, I attend because I enjoy attending and having the discussion with the students. I think it's just a lot of fun. All right. Okay, so, how much am I actually needed? And I think, I've talked to, various people about this. Of course, a lot of it will depend on your group, okay? If you have really dynamic group with a couple really gung-ho strong leaders, the advisor doesn't really have to do much of anything. It just maybe just sort of get out of the way, okay? All right. So if you don't have that, then you maybe have to be a little bit more involved and push a little bit. Okay, but I think it is good, just as Dan was saying earlier, that you do want to be involved. Okay, I think it doesn't help the organization for you to just sit back and be there on paper only. And once you get involved and are functioning with the people, you can decide how much of a role you have to take in terms of, like pushing people to do things or not do things or whatever. Okay. All right, so am I truly necessary? Okay, I'll say, well, probably not. And the other reason you might say that is that, I don't know how this is with other universities, but our Office of Student Organizations at UWC is really good. They're extremely helpful for every student organization. They really go out of their way to make sure that, that organization is doing whatever it can to attract the students it needs, regardless of political philosophy or anything. They're completely unbiased as far as I can tell. So that's been really good. Okay. All right, so what do I have, about 6 minutes?
6 minutes exactly.
Okay, good. So let's get to the things that maybe are sort of more interesting and hopefully useful for some of you guys. So what do we do as a small group to try to raise our visibility? Well, one of the things our university does, and again, I don't know how this is with other universities, we have this thing called a Blue Gold Organization Bash. Blue Gold is our student, mascot, which only recently was decided because we didn't actually know is now some kind of giant bird of prey with blue and gold feathers. Okay, so anyway, that's why this has this funny name. But anyhow, twice a year what they do at the beginning of each semester, out in the fall can be outside, all student organization groups get a table. They just set up there with some information about it, a sign-up sheet, and students are made well aware of this, and they just walk through the whole thing going, oh wow, that's a really cool group. I'd like to know more about that. And they can go and chat with somebody from it and decide, hey, I'm interested in, sign up for it. Okay? And so this is done, again, very early at the beginning of fall semester, then also later in spring semester. In the spring semester, it has to be inside. Okay. All right. So this is how we get a lot of our new freshman members, because they find out that we exist this way through this Blue Gold Organization Bash. Okay. Once we've sort of met the first couple times, or let's say we've at least decided the time that we're meeting and where we're meeting, we'll do standard chalking, Okay, go out and say something. And we do try to be fairly inclusive, I guess, sort of like what, was it Todd, I think, talking about getting the nuns, just saying, something very sort of generic, are you somebody that is maybe non-religious and interested in, discussing topics that relate to thinking about things in a rational, critical way? Maybe this is a group that would be of interest to you, something like that. Okay. All right, so what else do we do? This is something, I don't know if we got this idea from the Secular Student Alliance, or if one of our members had this idea before, but we have this Ask an Atheist table. And this has proved to be really, really fun, okay? And so usually once a week, especially when it's good outside, we'll go out to the campus mall. We have a little table we can set up, and a nice little placard that says Ask an Atheist. And usually one, or I should say typically two, but at least one of our members, well, it has to be at least one, right? Will be out there, sitting there, and they'll just sit down, very friendly, smiling, watching people walk by. And if people are interested in coming, hey, you're an atheist, what's that all about? And so anyhow, we found this is a really nice way of attracting people. And even if we don't get people to sign up, usually we get a few people to sign up because, again, we have that little obligatory sign-up sheet there asking for their email address. People will at least know, hey, there's this group, of atheists and agnostics that's on campus. Okay, so this actually turns out to be really good. On cold, wet, rainy days, we can go into our student union, but there we're only allowed to reserve 3 spots per semester. And I can understand why that is. With about 250 plus student groups, every student group has sort of 3 shots to be inside when they want to. Okay, so that, we have to be a lot more careful about when we decide. So if it's in the spring semester and it's winter, we say, well, okay, do we want to do an Ask an Atheist table now, or do we want to wait? Okay, so anyhow, during the fall, it's hardly ever a problem until later on. Okay, of course, we always try to be out there when there's ever traveling, preachers that come through, and some of them are really good about posting where they're going to go. I mean, Brother Jed and Sister Cindy have a website, and they'll tell you exactly where they're going to be. So that's really nice. But there's others that just, who knows where they come from. They were passing through and they show up on campus. And so we always want to make sure that we're out there. Although I don't know in some sense how necessary that is, because I mean everybody's seen this. College students that I've seen give these people an incredible harassment. So, all right. So here is Ben. He's our current president. He's a junior, so he'll be a senior next year. Here's one of our indoor Ask an Atheist tables. And so here you can see, here's the Ask an Atheist billboard there. And you'll note 2 minutes? Okay. And you'll notice all the nice stuff there from SSA. Thank you guys very much for that. Okay, so 2 minutes. I'm going to try to move along a little bit quicker here. Here's some pictures of Ben outside harassing some traveling preacher. Okay. All right, so what are some other things that we try to do? This has actually turned out to be pretty good. We try at least a couple times a semester to actually get together with some other student in an organization and have some meeting, figure out a topic in advance when we can meet, have both groups there, and that can actually be really quite interesting. So we've met with the college feminists before, and we thought we'd pick something that was a little bit more controversial, that maybe they wouldn't necessarily have the same perspective on it as we did. Okay, so the subject there was pornography and prostitution. Okay, and that actually turned out pretty well. We also had a pretty good meeting with a non-denominational Christian group called the Navigators. Okay, and that we did last semester. The middle one there, well, that you can imagine, I think we were sort of, no one was really shouting at each other, but we were just talking past each other completely. We were hoping maybe somewhere we could find some things that we might agree on, but that just didn't really happen. But nonetheless, it was interesting to try to do this. So I think this is something that is really interesting that you can try to do, find different groups, you know, and again, it doesn't have to be, you know, anything that deals with religion. As you can see, like when we were talking with the college feminists, you know, nothing there that deals with religion at all. Okay. All right, there's just a quick picture of that meeting we had with the Navigators. Okay, we managed to get a bigger room because we had them join us in the discussion, and actually that went over pretty well. Okay, there's another picture of it. And then finally the last thing, and this is what I'll wrap this up with, it costs a little bit more money, but at least once a year, maybe once every 3 semesters, like that, something like that. We'd like to have a bigger event that involves not just the campus but the community. And of course, this is, you know, how I first found out about the group. All right, and we did this again last fall, again with Dan Barker, but we wanted to do something a little bit different, and that is we managed to convince a local pastor to have a discussion, and we really wanted it to be a discussion, not a debate, all right, where we would talk about the idea of the separation of church and state and see, you know, was there common ground about things that, you know, this pastor with a particular religious view would agree with what Dan had to think about. And of course, we had an audience with questions and stuff. And so that turned out pretty well also. Of course, that costs more money. It's harder to do, but we'd like to be able to do something like that, at least, like I said, once a year, or at least maybe once every 3 semesters. And this is just a picture of, there's Dan right there, about a half hour before that got started. All right, I finished on time, so great. Thank you very much.